Marketo has been one of those few odd products in computer technology which addresses both small businesses, and we have the world's largest organizations like Amazon and Google and so on using Marketo to do their marketing. And that's because Marketo can be that adapted. In reality, when you're an organization like Adobe, your sales cycle doesn't end when a contract is signed. Your sales cycle ends when a client actually goes live. When a client renews, in the world of subscription, you've only really been successful if that client renews. If they buy your software, implement it, and then 3 years later they change it for something else, you've not been successful. It's about making sure you know who your competitors are and where those gaps are, and picking your fights. And we could have picked a fight with the number 1, 2, 3, and 4, but we decided to only pick a fight with the number 1. We knew if we dislodged enough of their customers, we'd be established and we could then start picking fights with the others. But we ignored the others. When I first joined Marketo, we had email, we had a basic mobile capability, we had social, and we had events, and we had web, 5 channels. This last year, we've brought dynamic chat, so conversational communications as a channel. I can sell you, if I'm, say, a big tax advisory type business, I can sell you tax advisory, I can probably sell you audit. And from audit, I can probably sell you accounting services. And from accounting, I can possibly sell you consulting. And so that's how, say, the big 4 work. Cross-selling those functions, using AI to help us see more options, to be able to sort complex masses of data faster than a human can, to enable us to service the right thing up to an individual. I'm one of those people that think email will eventually go, because more than anything, because it is so full of rubbish. There's so much junk. It's actually making sure everyone's looking at every single touch point a client can have with you. So it includes, thinking about your offline stuff, your advertising, your traditional paper copy advertising you may still do. If you're covering any sort of radio or TV stuff, if you're doing physical events, it's much easier to do things. You can probably do more in an hour face-to-face than you can do in an hour online. You can get more rapport going in those scenarios. You can get to see if somebody's being honest. You get this feel whether somebody's being a bit shifty.
As an advice to other people who are building the GTM motions, how do they monitor and plan pipeline generation and maturity, and especially in the context of enterprise sales?
Yeah, first of all, let's talk about Adobe's business.
Okay.
And Adobe's business is pretty much all enterprise with regards to the technology that I'm involved with. So people know Adobe usually for 2 things. They either know us as the Photoshop company. That's actually about 2/3 of our business, and something like 1/3 of the world's population are clients. So Photoshop, Illustrator, etc. And it's used for every piece of content creation in the world. It's the most endemic piece of technology. The next thing they know us for is PDF. So Acrobat, dealing with documents, PostScript, etc., which actually is where we started. That's about another quarter of our business. And then the piece that I work in is called DX, or customer experience, and we work on building the marketing function for our clients. It's the high ticket item. So one end of the spectrum, we have our $100 a piece software that you use time and again just to do general business stuff. Ours is very specialized, a lot more expensive, obviously, specialized business. So that's that small piece. It's the growing part of our business. It's also where we have the most staff, the most customer-facing people, because it's obviously a much more technically involved piece. So if we focus on that, it's almost entirely enterprise level. The rest of our business is everything. And we in essence still have to divide that business. And when we acquire companies, and when we acquired Workfront, when we acquired Magento, our commerce engine, and when we acquired Marketo, those tools actually do address small business, medium business, and enterprise business. And we have to obviously adapt to cover those as well. But primarily our business is divided into 2 horizontal sectors and several verticals, 4 verticals in essence. So the 2 horizontals we look at is industry or super enterprise, the biggest clients we have. Those clients are typically large scale clients for us who spend a significant amount with us already, and usually have 2 or 3 of our products from our large suite of offerings. There are the occasional one product company in there with potential to sell other products too, but these guys spend a significant amount of money with us, either regionally, say in EMEA or in the UK, or globally. And we could have, say, a local office for a global player like a Ford Motor Company or an Infosys, for example. And we will then service that with a high level of staff. So those accounts require more people. Then we have our solutions team who cover everything from our small business to our medium-sized business. Those people are not quite in that bracket to be our top customers, and our new business, people who don't have any Adobe software or really don't have much Adobe software, which again we do win that sort of business on a regular basis. So that's all in our solutions team. Slightly different approach there. Is a lot more smaller teams dealing with typically smaller customers and smaller opportunities, but actually it's a massive growth area for us and a really successful business model that we have. So a small number of our clients in the industry thing, it really is below 100 customers per country that we have in that bracket. Everybody else, and there are thousands, will be in solutions. And so we divide that way. And how do we monitor it? Well, we monitor it by having very robust systems. So we use very well-defined sales stages, a bit like when you're using a marketing automation tool like Marketo, and you really go down to granular levels to design your scoring for leads, for example, both up and down and so on. We do the same with our opportunities that we're tracking for a new client. So very, very well-defined sales stages, very well-defined processes. We call ours customer journey management. Funnily enough, it's not quite the same as customer journey management for technology, but it's our customer journey management. So we make sure that we have a good understanding of what our clients are after. We make sure we have a point of view that we're actually trying to encourage them to consider. We make sure we have in there a good map of our client's organization, and etc. We have a range of things that we actually make sure we have. So again, it's very structured sales stages, very structured sales process, and then very robust reporting. So that we use a CRM system primarily as our system of process or a system of record, and then we overlay that with simpler ways of reporting. So we use, for example, a product called Clary, which takes our Salesforce environment and makes it a lot easier to look at and use for a manager to manage their forecasts and their opportunities. And we use things like Power BI to get whatever level of granular report we want coming out the back end of our CRM system. We tend to do that because it gives us that ability to create things that show certain things that different teams may want to look at. So I'm much more interested in longer term pipeline. A sales manager is much more interested in what's going to close this quarter, for example. I mean, I'm interested in that as well, but I tend to be looking further ahead of where we potentially have problems.
Yeah, so maybe this is more of a top of funnel overview, okay, that you're making sure that is there. Okay, so that's very interesting.
Well, top of funnel, but top of funnel is the one where we do most of our work, because in essence I support the sales organization. So that while that's the whole funnel, in reality, when you're an organization like Adobe, your sales cycle doesn't end when a contract is signed. Your sales cycle ends when a client actually goes live. Or actually, the way I like to think of it, when a client renews. In the world of subscription, you've only really been successful if that client renews. If they buy your software, implement it, and then 3 years later they change it for something else, you've not been successful. And it's to me, we don't do this, but I personally think you should. Our sales cycle should end at renewal, and then it goes on to a renewal cycle, which is different.
Okay, so let's just consider a situation. So there's a new startup and they have built a product which is very enterprise grade, and they want to sell it to those enterprises. So what playbook should they follow? Where should they focus on? Is it events? Is it opinion leadership? Where do they start? What ideas will you give?
all of the above. Look, my background prior to coming to Adobe is actually in that field. I've started 9 companies launching new technology into my region. In most cases, it's been a product which has been launched somewhere else, which is coming to the EMEA region or to the UK. But sometimes it's been a product which hasn't gone to market yet. I've done both of those 8 or 9 times before coming here. And I have typically followed the same process. It's quite an old process, but it's based on a book called Crossing the Chasm. And the basic concept behind it is that when you launch something new, and particularly if you're launching something new into either an established market, or you're also establishing a new category of market. For example, we're launching a product at the moment which is the first of its kind. So we're not only really creating a new product, but we're also creating a new market. When you're doing that, your product is at the very beginning is not going to be perfect. It's not going to be quite there. It's going to have promise, and it's probably got all the foundational pieces right, but it's going to come over time. There's a roadmap of development which is going to take you to the vision that you're trying to sell. So your first customers will not be just the biggest names in the industry. You have to find your customers who have 2 things. 1, they're interested in helping you to develop your software to be better. And 2, they're willing to invest in you to help you do that. So we call those early adopters. And an early adopter framework is quite hard, but once you get it, those guys can be with you for life, and they can really help you develop that product. Once you've got those people on board and you keep delivering on that promise, you can then find the next stage. And this is the crossing the chasm bit, going from people who are early adopters by nature to people who are a little bit more conservative, people who actually make more informed decisions. And so that chasm, that gap, is the piece you have to cross. That's the crossing the chasm piece. And then once you get that piece right, and you do that typically by saying, I'm going to be very focused on who I sell to. So, for example, I may pick the FSI industry, a certain size of business, who use a particular set of products these days if I'm taking another product, trying to take another product out of the market. And I will focus on getting 10, 20, 100, whatever the number is you've chosen, of those customers. Once I've got those, I'll then take a sideways step to an associated industry. So if I'm doing FSI, I might move into professional services. If I'm doing retail, I might move into online retail. So it's never a big jump, it's just a slight sideways jump, because that's easier, because you can take half the learnings you've made from that first set of customers and directly apply it to the second set straight away. And then obviously you do the same again, you go sideways again. And then you get onto a phase in the book they call Main Street, where it just starts to, and then and then eventually you start to encourage the people who are true laggards, people who take their time to make a decision. But by then you're on to the next thing, and you're that product is now a standard product in the market, well established, and doing its own thing. And the key thing there is, well, the people you need at the beginning, and the people you need in the middle, and the people you need then are completely different people. They have different skill sets, different capabilities. You need evangelists at the beginning who can really, tell a story, build a vision, encourage people to come on board at that early stage. In the middle, you need people who are a lot more process driven, because there's a volume of things to do with. And at the end, you almost need order takers, people who don't have to be that envisioned and that visionary in their approach, but are very structured in terms of just processing stuff and getting it done. So yeah, that's how you do it. It's a proven track record. I've done it myself, said it 8 or 9 times, and they've all been successful to different levels, but some of them are very successful. So it's a very sort of standard approach, and I'm using it in one of my approaches now.
Okay, so help me clarify my thinking in this part. So you've chosen an industry, and you're sort of like going after that. You're a new startup. So where do you focus on? Is it again on brand building? Is it on demand generation? Is it like a direct sales force? Where should I invest? Because maybe it's not my luxury to invest in all of those.
There's no question. You have to, day one, whether you have a longer term strategy to be partner led or not, day one has to be direct. And the reason it has to be direct is because nobody else knows about your technology. And the amount of money you have to invest in building your first customers won't extend to also bring on new partners who also have to have the same mentality, by the way, that same early adopter type piece. So you're better off focusing on getting your customers and then going out to build your partnerships as a secondary or third level piece. So it's about a direct sales force. It's about making sure you know who your competitors are and where those gaps are, and picking your fights. And I did this a few years ago with another vendor in a different industry, and we could have picked a fight with the number 1, 2, 3, and 4. But we decided to only pick a fight with the number 1. We knew if we dislodged enough of their customers, we'd be established and we could then start picking fights with the others. But we ignored the others. So when we were in competitive scenarios against number 2 and number 3, we just ignored them. They didn't exist to us. They were not important. That's actually a really difficult thing to do because the market is full of startups shouting for space. But the one you all are going after is usually the leader, the gorilla in the market, as we often call them, because they tend to bully the market. They strut around and make the market theirs. But you can beat those guys. You can knock them out. As we have, in that case, we proved it. We took them on. We only targeted their top 100 customers. We only sold to those people. We only cared about that. We didn't care if they were talking to the other competitors. And after 18 months, we'd won all of those guys, not to actually be full-time customers, but to stop investing in the gorilla. So all of a sudden, that gorilla's top 100 customers were no longer spending money, and they were concerned. Mm-hmm. So they bought us. Now, that piece of technology is the industry standard for that industry globally. So through a very strategized approach, we became the market leader from a startup.
Okay, so and now let's just get deeper into this. So you're building a strategy for a particular industry, and you're saying, okay, this is a direct sales force, but enterprises are difficult. Like there are hierarchies, and how do you map those? How do you address? Where do you penetrate? Where do you start? I
mean, the obvious one is what are you offering, and who are your ideal customers within that customer?
Yeah.
So for us, it's generally the marketing teams that are the people we're after, because we're supplying marketing technology. But at the end of the day, I mean, there's other pieces of our work, but it is primarily in the marketing space. So obviously, we're interested in talking to the marketing leaders, the CMOs, the heads of go-to-market, the heads of customer, those type of things. But without question, particularly in the enterprise, you are going to need to talk to IT in some form. So getting in touch with the IT leadership, you're going to need to probably talk to sales, particularly on the B2B side of things, because B2B is about the full funnel. It's about a repeat relationship and supplying leads to your sales team. So get in contact with your salespeople. And then, interestingly enough, it's the back office stuff. It's making sure you speak to the CFO and the COO and probably the CEO. And building those relationships at all tiers within the organization. So if you're selling a transformational piece of technology, which at Adobe we do, it's not about being siloed in one organization. You have to show that you're able to address the whole business, even if you're selling something just for one department today. You're only going to do that if you've got a vision around it that says, we can change everything you do. We can make your business better. And the advantage we have as Adobe, we're not a startup, obviously, is that most of the technology we talk about is stuff that has radically changed our business. We use our own technology everywhere. And it's completely changed the way in which we build. And it's why, as an organization, we continue to have double-digit growth. It's why, as a 40-year-old company, we are still growing at that rate. And how, in the time I've been here, we've gone from a $5 billion corporation to a $20 billion corporation in just 6 or 7 years. So it's we are growing at a rate that other companies are envious of, and it's because we've swallowed everything we say and done it ourselves, proven it can work, and we go out and love telling the story to other people. But we try not to just sell products; we try to sell the whole thing, the vision of how we can change. So those are some of the sort of the key nuggets for me as we do that.
So let's get towards the professional services market. So what are some of the unique challenges and strategies involved in setting up GTM for a services market? I mean, how does it differ? How is it similar? What are your thoughts about that?
So it's both different and similar in many ways, and that's the key thing. It's so first of all, to be honest, that's my background. I come from a professional services background. I'm actually an architect by training, building architect, not software architect. So it's very important title difference. And that's a professional service, as are lawyers, as are consulting firms, as are delivery firms, as are, there's a whole range of them, of the professions that are out there. And they are big. I mean, it's a big industry. I mean, if you take the UK market, professional services are a massive part of our economy. So it's a very important market to go after. And I joined Marketo originally, prior to the Adobe acquisition, to actually set up their go-to-market strategy for professional services, because they didn't see it as an essential part of the business at the time. Marketo, like every company, had started life doing certain things very well, and we had a very well-defined ICP, ideal customer profile, and professional services firms weren't in that bracket. They were an associated sort of side field, but we focused on FSI and we focused on manufacturing and so on. But I came in and defined what the ICP was, professional services. And the first thing you do with professional services is you have to realize that ultimately it's not selling anything tangible. So they tend not to sell things. So they're not selling a piece of equipment or a car or something. They're selling people. Their value that they're selling is the knowledge of the people they have in place. But you've got to start thinking of those people, in essence, as almost an object they're able to sell, an entity that they can sell. They are very strong on relationships, and building those relationships is how they get repeat business, how they grow their business. It's not around, I've got the latest and greatest widget, or in their case, I have the latest and greatest people. That can be part of your story, but it's actually, we do a good service for you. Because of that, you're going to do two things. You're going to give us more business, and two, you're probably going to recommend us to your associates and colleagues, and so on and so forth. And then we increase the types of services we offer to our clients. And so again, going back to that idea of crossing the chasm, I can sell you, if I'm, say, a big tax advisory type business, I can sell you tax advisory. I can probably sell you audit. And from audit, I can probably sell you accounting services. And from accounting, I can possibly sell you consulting and so on. That's how, say, the big four work. And so, again, cross-selling those functions. So treating businesses like that, they are a long-term business. They have a relationship with clients which is long held. Secondly, you'll find that relationship is often held in silos because most of those firms are partner-led. So people start at the bottom, having graduated from their chosen course, and they get the experience. Then they become an associate, then they become a partner, and they run their little business like it's a little private business. Sometimes that gets bigger, and you get these member firm structures. So the likes of Deloitte and Grant Thornton and EY and all those firms are basically an assembly of firms. There may be 100, 200 firms that are pulled together under the same brand. But operate independently and have independent management structures and independent decision making, and which has its own challenges when it comes to making decisions. And buying technology, for example, is always fun with those guys. But you just have to adapt that way. So thinking about the way in which that business is structured and reflecting your go-to-market strategy to mirror that. So that reminds me of when I did the Deloitte business and the Grant Thornton business here, in that those firms couldn't buy technology at the time globally very easily because they were member firms and they had to get the buy-in of every managing director of every one of their 200 members. And so what we did is we said, well, what if we gave you a package that you could then cookie cutter around your organization? They all work together as if you were buying all in one go, but individual firms could have their say on how big their investment might be and what their particular niche might be. And by doing that, we were able to win business with large membership firms that way because we reflected their business. We then used the same thing when we were working with design firms. So, working with large-scale architects and engineers who also have the same challenges, but they tend to be more regionally based where their business is. So again, the regional office might be much more focused. Again, one big business, but the regional focus is different. And so again, you get that opportunity to sell small into a larger structure. So it's just being reflecting what their business is. And then the final thing that I'll point out is, I'm very clear what my job is. I'm a sales guy of some description. There are a spectrum of salespeople, but I'm in the sales team. I'm a seller. In the professional services arena, it's almost like the dirty word. They don't do selling. They do relationships. They do business development. They nurture their knowledge and their client base. And it's the partner's little black book of contacts that you can phone up and meet for a drink in his club or at the football ground or whatever his particular interest is, or on the golf course. It's not the same as having a sales team with a funnel of leads they're working through. Actually, it is, but the language they use and the way in which they work is different from a traditional sales team. So you adapt your language. So when I'm talking to a professional service, I never talk about their sales team or their sales funnel. I'll talk about business development. I'll talk about relationships. I'll talk about the ability for the partner to have control over his business area, while the wider business can see what's going on and obviously have their input, for example, on quality of brand, making sure that everybody's adhering to the right brand and so on. So yeah, professional services, I love it. It's challenging. It's not the easiest set of businesses to do business with because of its fragmented nature, and they buy very specifically in certain areas. But I've been very lucky in terms of the technology I've been able to sell here at Adobe is very useful to those guys. Very useful indeed. So we have all of the big consulting firms are clients of ours.
So how do you influence them?
And partners, by the way, as well. So they partner to give consulting and advice delivery as well. So it's a double-edged benefit for us.
Okay, so in terms of influence, how do you? So you've talked about relationships, and you mentioned the importance of relationships. So they're the only thing. But is it just about relationship? Is it there are other mechanism of influence that works, doesn't work? What are your thoughts about that?
You have to cover everything. So, I mean, it's a bit like when you go into talking to a client, saying, well, how do you engage? And, a client may try and say, oh, we send emails out, or we run some dinners, or what, and there's a whole range of things people do. But it's actually making sure everyone's looking at every single touch point a client can have with you. So it includes, thinking about your offline stuff, your advertising, your traditional paper copy advertising you may still do. If you're covering any sort of radio or TV stuff, if you're doing physical events, what do you mean by an event? An event may be not quite traditional in the sense that, some people think of events as just trade shows, which are sort of not so popular these days. They were maybe 10, 20 years ago. But I mean, one of the companies that we won was a house builder, and they have a show home. And people visit the show home to look at an example of the house that's going to be built, not built yet, is on plan, but so they can make a decision whether they're going to buy based on a physical example, a sort of a very good example of what they could buy a year before it's going to be available. What we persuaded that house building company to look at is that's an event. That person visiting your showroom is an event. You need to capture their behavior there and what they do and what they're interested in. And you need to be able to communicate both pre and post that event with that event in mind. So, being able to look at the ways in which a business works and going across every touch point is the important thing, because when it comes to where things are today, if you don't have every touch point covered, and if you don't think about how is that individual going to be engaged with me, one, you're not going to know what they're doing and therefore know the next best thing to engage with them on. And two, you're not going to be able to sort of keep your brand consistency alive, because it's you want to make sure that what your brand says about you, whether that's the logo, the catchphrase you use, the language you use, the style of the individual person they connect with in person, a salesperson or a host at an event. All those things are part of your brand, and you've got to keep that consistent. And those are sort of themes that we keep into our back of our mind all the time. Always make sure you're focusing on brand as well as focusing on the sales process, if you like, of how you take a customer from interested, engaged to customer.
Okay, that's awesome. So obviously, I would assume that personalization plays a huge role. Okay.
Yeah.
And obviously, you guys have Marketo, and one of the bigger thing that keeps on coming up again, personalization at scale.
Yeah.
Okay. And how exactly are you doing it at Marketo? Like, is it? What are some of the tools that you guys are using?
I'll spread it. Yeah. I'll spread it wider than just Marketo, because it's a theme that runs throughout the Adobe business. So. It's very important to Marketo clients, but it's also important to our other clients and other technology as well. So personalization today matters more than ever before, because if you go back probably not that far, maybe 10 years, and for some companies, we're talking about yesterday. We're not talking about 10 years ago. It's the world of batch and blast. There's a pile of people over there that we want to talk to. We're bombard them with stuff, even when they don't want it. And it goes. And then they say, oh, we'll personalize it. And that was not much better than a mail merge. So they still got all the same message, but it had their first name on it, which again isn't really personalization. But it was a step in the right direction. But now, as customers become more savvy, as the new generations of technology come in, who are mobile savvy, social savvy, and able to sort of really discern what they want, the amount of information that your potential customer, your prospect, is going to look at before you know they've engaged, before you physically engage in any way whatsoever. And that physically, I mean before you physically send them something like an email, or before you meet them at an event, or before you pick up a telephone and have a conversation, or vice versa if they do the same in reverse. Yeah, that amount of if you like, self-research and self-guided information gathering is growing, and customers are talking to you later and later in process. Used to be like 50%, now is like 75%, whatever it is. I mean, I haven't got that number to hand, but it is just growing and getting bigger and bigger, and the amount of time we have is being compressed. So personalization sets you out, and so what we mean by personalization at scale really covers two things. It's about, if I've got 5 million people that I want to communicate with, I need to be able to communicate to each one of those people as if they're a total individual. So it's a one-on-one relationship. Even when I'm sending my batch email out to everyone, it needs to be very personalized to that person's written. Much more beyond just a name, but every piece of context that's in there, every piece of content, every graphic, every word that's actually on the sheet of paper that you're sticking through their inbox, ideally should be very specific to them. And there's no reason why we can't do that, because we want to be able to sort of pull all the data we have about something together and use that to drive our personalization. We also want to make sure we're considerate of time. And what I mean by time is the aspect of real time and appropriate time. So when is the right time for somebody to get something? When is it right to send a message? Do they need a response right now because the question that they're after is quite quick? So an example might be, I'm trying to engage with somebody who's about to board a flight in an airport. I'm the air carrier, and I need to give them some information. That's, in terms of time, that's right now. That's instantaneously real time. And it's maybe 250 people in an airport full of 7,000 people, of which maybe 3,000 may be on your other flights. So you've got to be very focused on who you send to. Then you've got to pull out all the personal information. And then you may need to choose. Well, they're all in different scenarios. Some have mobile phones, some don't. Some will be looking at screens. Some will be maybe on a laptop looking at email. And all of those mean that you've got to make a decision about who you're going to send what information, when and where. Understanding what their intent and propensity is to do something, whether it's to buy or whether it's to take a next best action. All that has to be done personally, one-on-one. You have to be able to have the ability to do that. So having a system that can corral massive amounts of data, disseminate that out to lots of different people at the same time or near the same time, and then personalize it is the goal. And we can do that in both our B2B solutions and our B2C solutions that we have here at Adobe, truly in real time. And we can then go down to the level of content as well. And that's only possible because of AI. So using AI to help us see more options, to be able to sort complex masses of data faster than a human can, to enable us to service the right thing up to an individual is very important. So we see AI, for example, is an aid to our work, not a replacement. It does things we've never been able to do. It's not replacing the work we've done. It's giving us something we couldn't do before. And that's actually the way we see AI, by the way. It's the ability to give us something we couldn't do before. And an example might be, for example, I own a small hotel in a village in Italy, and it's on the coast, and it's quite arty, and it's got some theatres, and it's got some nice shops, and it's got a little sports ground down the road, and I've got 4 customers booked in that I need to send a confirmation email to just confirm their thing. They're arriving this weekend, and I don't want to sit and write 4 individual emails. I want to be able to say, here's what I want to say. So your booking is confirmed, you arrive here, here's the details, how you get from the airport to my hotel. Here's a copy of your invoice, because it may be you paid a different price as well. And that goes individually to all the people that are on that list. Not only that, I also know, because I'm picking up data from other sources, not just the data I've learned, I'm picking up things like what their interests are. So customer number one loves football. And so I make sure that when that goes, well, I don't, the AI does, that the context of the text says, great, thanks for coming, thanks for booking my hotel. By the way, there's a game on Saturday at this ground, such and such is playing such and such. Tickets are £10. I've got you an extra discount for that too. Would you like to book that? So that's one person. The next person loves his food. And so him and his wife are coming in. They say, yeah, here are the top 3 restaurants. By the way, if you book this one, you can charge it to your hotel room. So that's the foodie sorted out. The other person is a sun worshipper. So it's like, yeah, the beach is just down the road on the right. By the way, we've took the precaution of saying you probably want to book some beds, so we booked some sunbeds for you. That's that person. And then the last one might be somebody who's into a bit of shopping. And so these are the recommended shops we go to, and we have a local discount scheme, which we can sign you up to if you wish. I haven't had to do any of that. The AI has helped me do that within my engagement tools, and that appears in the email. But also, by the way, if they look it up on their mobile phone device, it'd be in the app that we have. It would be on our website. So if they log into our website to check their booking, the same information is available, obviously with links and more information if they want it. All that's being done automatically based on data. So understanding data, and that data is data you own, but data that you can plug into. So data you can bring through a feed. Typically we talk about things like weather data and traffic data, but there's lots of other data sources you can use. There's data sources you have that aren't in your marketing suite, like your transactional stuff around what they paid for, their invoicing systems, that sort of thing. Or it could be data that somebody else has that you'd like to go and get access to. So we have federated access to that information. So you don't have to copy it into your system or buy it. You can just get used to it for a time from a partner. So that's very popular with the likes of airlines, with shopping partners in an airport. That's not, they have their separate data they want to work with, and that allows them to actually mix and match that data for a particular set of communications. So yeah, it's corralling data using AI and having a clear goal that you can do that at scale. So I was giving the example 4. It might as well be 4 million or 40 billion if you wanted to. The systems are there. Obviously, we need to build bigger and better hardware to support that, but yes, it's very possible to do that sort of large scale piece. And it's why we service the world's largest companies with their marketing. So we can do that. Okay,
so that's great. So So obviously everybody is getting emails now. Okay, so
yep. Email is not dead. It should be dead because it's quite an old school thing, but it's not dead. No, it's still growing.
Yeah, so what are your thoughts? I mean, what's the future of email? I mean, there are multiple filters. There is this tab, email going to this tab, and then there's a good number of players who are abusing all of this. Okay, so how does this evolve? Where do you guys see the future of email?
Again, I'll be careful here because I'll give my personal opinions, but I'm one of those people that think email will eventually go. Because more than anything, because it is so full of rubbish, there's so much junk. It's both physically and computer intensive to send huge amounts of email. You need lots of storage, you need lots of stuff. People are wanting to do more and more complex things in email that can be better done in other methods. And again, it's part of our role as an organization to show people that you can do that better, say through an app or through clever use of SMS, for example. So there are ways to do the same thing in different ways. We've also got the other pressure that's coming from societies that are mobile first, not mobile next. So the countries that first started doing sort of email technologies, so you're talking European countries, Americans, and so on, they were they're in mobile next. So email is embedded everywhere. Everyone's got an email account. Everyone uses email. You go to parts of Africa, parts of Asia, for example, they bypass that because mass computers weren't available, they were too expensive, or the mass of the population doesn't have access, but pretty much everyone has a mobile phone. And so mobile technology, even when it was basic, when it was just literally the brick type phones, before we got smartphones, that became the endemic platform that people needed to communicate on. And so when you go to those countries, China, Africa, India to a certain extent, there's countries all around the world that are like this. you really need to sort out the mobile piece first. So actually having a good app or having a good SMS capability, rich SMS is I think, a fantastically useful tool, even though it may only be an interim tool for now, because I think other things will overtake it. But these are ways in which people need to communicate. So email, long term, will probably die. I mean, some of the biggest, more established, mature markets still use vast amounts of email, but some of the biggest economies, some of the biggest populaces in the world don't really use email. And China, WeChat, it's not email at all. WhatsApp is growing like crazy. It's everywhere. So I think those sort of mediums will take over. And it's in our interest to make sure that as a channel, we just have to keep finding the other channels and make sure we still have the other channels. So, we've done that quite consistently inside of Marketo, for example, by making sure that we started, when I first joined Marketo, and I joined Marketo, by the way, as a customer before I joined as a part of their own team. We had email, we had a basic mobile capability, we had social, and we had events, and we had web, 5 channels. We've added more since, and this last year we've brought dynamic chat, so conversational communications as a channel. We've brought in our webinar channels to allow people to actually use webinars. And we've had that for a while inside the Marketo, but this is now interactive and embedded within the system as opposed to an external partnership. So there's more and more channels coming. Dynamic chat, by the way, is going to be available across our Adobe products in the future. It's not just going to be a Marketo B2B thing, because it's very useful in anybody who wants to engage with somebody live on screen. And you're going to see more and more of that type of thing. So conversation is going to grow. So we're constantly looking at new markets, and then some of our clients with our real-time data capabilities that we have now are looking at other channels to engage. And my favorite one will be an airline. So one of our airlines is Delta, in the US, massive carrier, wanted to sort of know how could they communicate more to their clients when they're in their ownership. And they're in their ownership, if you like, from just before they get to the airport, while they're at the airport, while they're on the plane, and while they're on the airport at the other end, before they then disappear off to their hotels or homes at the other end. And that's a window, depending on the flight, of a couple of minutes to a few hours. And they want to maximize that. And they said, well, one of the ways we could do it is we need a way of talking to them when they're on the plane. And of course, that's been difficult for years because we've not really had technology. We've now got Wi-Fi on planes. It's publicly available, which allows you to do things. But on the back of most planes these days, there's a seat back TV.
Yeah.
And you know who sat in it because you've got a man in a seat or a girl in a seat. It's so now you can communicate, and Delta are doing that. So they communicate through that seat to the individual in real time. So, for example, as they land at an airport, on the screen will say your baggage is going to be on carousel F. Your check-in flight for your connecting flight is 3 hours away. It's delayed. You may want to do this, and then they can introduce them to, say, a meal voucher or something else. So there's all sorts of things they can now do because they have a new channel, seatback TVs, and we would never have thought that, but we have now. And so there are lots of different things like that. Who would have ever thought that you could use screens in an airport as a one-on-one channel, not just a general information board or an advertising hoarding, but something you could communicate as somebody's walking by, just to talk to them, and you can do that. So, yeah, I was looking for new channels.
Yeah, but in terms of all of these, like these mass tools with bots and everything, do you think that in-person thing will be back again? So rather than having those demos play on its own, or maybe you're just falling into a sales pipeline, there's a person we're talking to, and this is
correct. Like in-person is important. And look, I don't believe that we want to be a world of remoteness. And I'll tell you why now, and this is a bit personal, but it's we all went through lockdown. We all went through the COVID lockdown, and some of us dealt with it very well, some of us didn't, and some of us had some challenges, some of us didn't. And I was very lucky at Adobe. Adobe did some great things to help us get through the COVID piece, both from an employee support basis, but also technology and so on. And the industry that I work in happens to be an industry that grew off the back of everybody being locked at home, because we had to change the way people did business. And so lots of our technology grew quickly. Our electronic sign business went through the roof. Our ability to do online transactions went through the roof. And our business did grow quite phenomenally inside of COVID, and we grew in terms of numbers. We grew by 20% of our staff bigger during lockdown, which is crazy. But whereas now we're back at work, we have a hybrid approach, and I think that benefits. Everyone likes a little bit of home and a little bit of being in the office. They don't want to all be in the office all the time because it's back to the old days and it's a little bit oppressive sometimes, and it's not quite so good for you as an individual. So that's a personal life balance. But you need to have it. But when you then take it away again, that ability to actually physically be in a room with somebody, sales in particular is a personal piece. It's much easier to do things you can probably do more in an hour face to face than you do in an hour online. You can get more rapport going in those scenarios. You can get to see if somebody's being honest. You get this feel whether somebody's being a bit shifty. And I've just been, unfortunately, I had my knee replaced earlier this summer, and it went wrong. So I was confined to home for quite a long time, so I couldn't travel. So I had like a personal lockdown in summer 2024, and I didn't see anybody face to face for about 5 months. It's really hard. And I was the only person going through it, by the way. All my colleagues were, we're going out for a meal now, or we're going to the pub, or whatever it is. So you miss it. That really changed my perspective, and I truly believe that we do need to keep that personal contact thing going. So at the end of the day, the most important channel is me sitting down across the table with you. It's not about me sending you an email or online here as we are today. I mean, what this allows us to do is obviously do it across countries and across time zones. And to get more done in a short period of time. I get more done when I'm working at home than I do when I'm in the office. But without that face-to-face contact, without actually being able to get things done in one-on-one or one-to-many conversations in person, I think you miss the very human nature of what we're about. And so keeping that human piece is why when it comes to AI, we guarantee that we're never going to let it be something that takes over. It's always going to be something that supports what we do and gives us the ability to do more with what AI provides. Very much keeping the person alive.
Okay, so you also mentioned during the talk that you have to go through all the touch points that your prospect is going through. Then this comes a massive problem of attribution. Okay.
Yep.
Which channel converted? Which channel didn't convert? Was it in person? Was it search? Was it this? Was it that? And that we've talked to many people, and we feel like, okay, nobody knows, nobody has a clue, it's still in the air. What are your thoughts about that? And how is Marketo handled?
So let's talk about it. So people generally don't do proper attribution. They pretty much skip on it. They do what I would call lazy attribution. Or we'll assign it all to the first touch, or we'll assign it all to the last touch, or some pretty basic model, because that's all their systems can handle, or it's all they want to sit and think about, because attribution isn't quite as important as they think it is, and so it doesn't get the recognition it does. And there are a fair number of our clients who really don't bother. We started looking at attribution maybe 10 years ago in the honest sense of the word, and we started to try and build some more complex models inside the Marketo alone, for example. And then while I was still at Marketo, we acquired a company called Visible. And Visible provides you with custom touch attribution models. So you can build the attribution model of your dreams, if you like. It allows you to have multi-touch attribution that you can mix and match and follow whatever model you wish, as well as having 6 or 7 standard models that you can just flip between in real time. And it allows you to look at both online and offline campaigns and efforts, and it's sort of fairly agnostic to where your data sits. So it doesn't matter what your CRM is. It doesn't really matter what your marketing automation system is. It ties itself very well with those. So that product has evolved into a product called Marketo Measure, which we've continued to invest in. It's available as a standalone solution. It's also available embedded inside Marketo. And that actually is now enhanced by being able to be tied to our CDP, our real-time CDP data source, not just to one CRM system. So we can bring multiple systems, multiple CRMs into our CDP, and then use that data to drive our attribution models. But we can also use the AI that's built into our CDP and into inside of Marketo Measure, to have AI-driven attribution. So we can start to think what might happen, to look at history to see what might happen, and make some informed guesses of where this might be heading. And so it's a lot more flexible, a lot more intelligent. It picks up on better intent data, better propensity data, and so on, built on real data that you hold, or real data you can get access to, and what AI is interpreting and developing and learning from. So yeah, it's very much a future for us. It's improved what's in our standard product, but it's also improved what's in our standalone attribution tool. Whether you buy that with or without Marketo, or whether you have another tool, then you can still use it. And now it's gone one stage further. We actually now have a tool which is based on our platform as a whole, called Mix Modeler, which allows you to basically build some really complex attribution around what's going on with your advertising activity and touch points against your physical marketing based touch points, and pulling all those together to create ad hoc reporting and modeling environments for you to analyze. So yeah, it's something which is getting bigger and bigger for us, and very important of what we do. But we want to encourage everyone to do it. So inside of standard Marketo, there is some better than average attribution reporting, just in the choice of reporting options that come with Marketo as standard.
Okay, so let's talk about your competition.
Mm-hmm.
So let's just talk about maybe HubSpot. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so HubSpot is catching up. It's catching up in different directions. Also, their CRM is taking on some of those Salesforce and all of that. Okay, and then there is always a question. Okay, where do I go? HubSpot versus Marketo and all of that. Okay, so that is one thing. The other thing is how well your customers are using Marketo. Like, it's a fairly complex tool. It has a lot of depth to it, but how well they are using it? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Okay, so I'll answer that question with a general answer, actually.
Okay.
It sort of doesn't matter what technology you look at for anything. Very few people use all of the capabilities. Most actually use a small proportion, probably less than 20%. I mean, I'm guessing there. That's not a quoted value, but I would say the majority of products that you buy, whether it's for designing something, whether it's for doing marketing, whether it's for doing engineering work, or whether it's doing project, whatever it is, most companies do the basics with it, and then that's fine, because it offers them enough value for that, and therefore they don't need to sort of sit on that stage. And that will be the same for us, HubSpot, Pardot, whatever. People scratch the surface with their technology. I think that's sad. I mean, if you've invested in something, make use of it. But hey, look, I'm just as guilty. My car has so many gizmos and aids in it, I actually don't know where most of them sit. So I don't bother. The car's set up, I drive it. But there's lots of stuff I can do to make that car better. Lights can be changed slightly. Exactly the same with everything we do. So yes, most people don't get the most out of it. We do have a very good set of Marketo customers. One of the things that drives Marketo success, if you like, in the market, is its community. I know this because when I joined, I was part of the community as a customer, and then I became part of that community when I joined Marketo, and then that community has carried on as we come to Adobe. Those people really do live and breathe and bleed purple. They have Marketo in the depths of what they do, and they do some amazing things, and they're always encouraging their colleagues. So we have hundreds of active user groups around the world, both virtual and in-person ones, that encourage each other to work. There's partnerships and so on. So there's this whole community that encourages it. That's a big thing. I think the other thing is really understanding that you only need to ask, can I get more? And the vendor will support you. Now, when you talk about competitors, I've seen things change in my time with Marketo with regards to competitors. And it's actually about where they operate and where they can operate. And I think it's the spectrum hasn't changed that much, other than certain products have sort of gone by the wayside or disappeared. So if you look at the spectrum, and I'll try and do this as visually as I can with my hands, you take the smallest business and the largest enterprise at the top, and there's a spectrum based on size of business. There are a range of tools that service those small businesses very well. Things like act on, click dimension as it used to be, etc. Those sort of entry level, more than capable tools that can do well. They tend to stretch up a little bit into small business. Then you've got HubSpot, which actually really starts in the sort of small business, particularly somebody who doesn't want to buy, say, a CRM separately and so on. And they stretch up, but they don't really go into proper enterprise business. Just starting to now because their recent developments have taken them into that space. But that's not where their sweet spot is small to medium-sized businesses. You've got Pardot, which really sort of does a bit of enterprise, does a little bit of small, but again, is the upper end, perhaps a little bit higher than HubSpot, but that's there. You've got Eloqua, there was the Oracle offering, which really only operates in the enterprise. But of course, they've not really developed that product for the last few years. Some say it's probably dead. And so that's disappearing, and we're doing lots of swaps in that space, interestingly enough, for Marketo. And then you've got Marketo. And Marketo has been one of those few odd products in computer technology which addresses both small businesses. We have firms of 10, 15 people using Marketo, and we have the world's largest organizations like Amazon and Google and so on using Marketo to do their marketing. And it's that spectrum. And that's because Marketo can be that adapted. And yes, there's a lot of depth to it that maybe those smaller firms don't use, although some of our better users are smaller. And then the large firms do absolutely have to do that because they're using the really complex capabilities that Marketo offers to do large-scale enterprise marketing to millions and millions of customers worldwide and prospects. So it's that range. So that's what I think it sits. I think the argument of a CRM with HubSpot is a little bit of a strange one because while CRMs are still around and they're still important, very important to some organizations like Salesforce, CRMs are probably not going to last much longer because people have taken over with CDPs, with data warehouses and so on, where they might have multiple CDPs or other data sources they want to pull together. CRMs are just one of those features they want to pull in. So actually boasting that you have a great CRM, not a great advantage. What's really important is how do you engage with your customers. And the other thing I would say is bluntly is that, a beauty of a marketing automation or lead management system will drive you forward because it actually can prove its value by generating business for you at the end of the day that you can put down as bottom line. CRM systems don't do that. They're a cost. They don't really generate new business for you. So I think CRMs will go. So again, I'll miss out on that one. But the other thing is also trying to see how you can grow. So the latest development for Marketo is buying groups. We're now focusing on how we can actually work with buying groups. We have CDP, which has a B2B capability. We are still the only B2B CDP on the market. And so having that ability to pull multiple data sources and real-time data into that growing real-time understanding of how business works enabled us to make Marketo a more powerful, faster, reactive tool, enabled us to actually bring those real-time, multiple-touch attribution models in, driven by AI, and now allowed us to actually develop an understanding of who buying groups are, how they engage with us, who they are, what they do, and using AI to identify and find those buying groups so we can engage them effectively, and then using that to link with Marketo to be able to do real-time engagement with those people on a normal lead funnel management basis. So it's about that long-term investment, and the beauty of being acquired by Marketo, Marketo being acquired by Adobe, is that investment funnel has been there for those past few years. It's been quiet in the field. You've not necessarily seen it because we've been doing some big things, but you're now starting to see those things going through the new channels in Marketo, the new functional area for B2B buying groups, which is called AJO B2B, by the way, and our B2B CDP. B2B for us is a massive area, and Marketo will continue to be across the whole spectrum from small business to large, the smallest environment to the largest enterprise.
Okay, that's awesome. So
we're at time.
Yeah, we're at time. So just quickly, I guess I see Van Gogh and Inferno behind you. So
yeah, my background.
Correct. Yeah. Okay, so I just want to. So if you have to recommend 3 books to someone who's getting into sales and relationships, some deeper books they want to read, so what would those be?
I am the worst person to recommend books for that. I mean, look, the books I give away. I'm a visual person. I trained as an architect. I don't read a lot of books. I don't find books exciting. But if there's one book I can recommend for somebody who's trying to bring new technology to market, it's Crossing the Chasm. It's an absolute basic in how to take an unknown technology and bring it to market structurally, and to be successful at doing it. It's been around, I said, about 40 years. That's the one I would recommend. The rest of it, don't take book recommendations from me. I don't really read enough to be able to do that. I read lots of newspapers and articles and case study stuff that we generate, but I don't read books, I'm afraid. I look at picture books.
Okay. So,
not words.
Okay. Oh, okay, that's awesome. So, Russell, it was a great talk. I mean, I could have continued for an hour. I guess this is very, very valuable, and I guess we would love sharing it with you. And I truly loved our conversation. I hope I didn't miss anything.
Nope. Brilliant. Thanks for your time.
Thanks, Rudy. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.